Thanks for coming back. My name is Jody Shaw. I work at Smith College in Res Life and Student Affairs. Today is part 2 of what happened to me at Smith College, but remember that there's an awful lot going on at the college. There is a part 3, a part 4, a part 5, a part 6. These are just the 2 most direct incidents that happened to me. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on at the college that I'm going to talk about. So, part 2. After I left the library, I went to work in the Department of Residence Life. And I thought that by getting away from the academic side, I was going to get away from things having this hyper-racialized environment, in which we're talking about race an awful lot and thinking about whiteness and what it means to be white and white privilege and so on and so forth. As it turns out, residence life at Smith College is very concerned with social justice. It's a core tenet of the department. I was handed a book very early on. This is the book right here that I was given as an administrative assistant who was going to be answering emails and phone calls and other tasks. I am not sure if I was expected to read the book or not, but I did read it, and I actually did try to talk to my director about it. Actually, both of my directors at the time, and both of them told me after maybe like 2 minutes of talking, they both said, I haven't really thought about this that much. So that was kind of a red flag to me that, this is a core tenet of the department, but quote, haven't really thought about it that much. There were some discussions about race and identity. Anyway, I sat through a bunch of these meetings and just really trying to keep my head down and my mouth shut. I would go to these meetings and then I would go back to my job, which was completely different from any of the stuff that was being discussed in these meetings. And then last winter, we had a meeting and we were told that our attendance was required at a mandatory 3-day professional development retreat, and that the first day would be devoted to discussing our identities. Now, at Smith, identity means social identity. So I was troubled by the thought of me having to talk about my identity because I don't really come to work to engage in therapy or comb through past traumas or really to talk about religion or politics or anything. I really just come to work to do my job. I approached my supervisor and I said, I don't feel comfortable discussing my race at work, so I don't really want to do this. And she said, just say you're uncomfortable and abstain. I thought, okay, I kind of have her blessing here. So the first day of the retreat came, and there were 2 hired professional facilitators who presumably have authority in this area. They were from a local consultancy firm. We went around the room and the facilitators asked us to tell us about your race in the context of your childhood, your adolescence, and your college years. So now we have 2 things that I don't want to discuss with this group at work, which is my race, given the context and the backdrop of what's going on at that school, nor do I wish to discuss anything having to do with my childhood, adolescence, or college years in a workshop with my colleagues. I don't think it's relevant to my job. Everyone went around the room and pretty much recited the script. They personalized it and added concrete details from their life, but it was pretty much the script based upon their skin color. And it got to me and I said, I'm uncomfortable talking about this stuff at work, so I'm going to pass. So everything seemed like fine after that, but then a few hours later, one of the facilitators said, I want to be clear. Any white person who expresses discomfort or distress or any kind of resistance toward talking about their race when asked to is not actually experiencing discomfort. So don't feel like you should comfort them, because it's not discomfort. It's called white fragility, and it's a power play. This was a public humiliation because I'm white and because I expressed an authentic feeling. This was framed as a manipulative maneuver on my part. It was an act of aggression me saying I'm uncomfortable. And apparently it's only if a white person does that. They made it very clear that this only applies to white people, and that anyone else and the rest of the human race, if they say they're uncomfortable, then we will believe that they're uncomfortable. But if a white person says they're uncomfortable in this context, no, they're actually not uncomfortable. They're doing something bad. They have ill motives. I mean, I can go into how I felt. I mean, like psychic damage, yeah, that's not surprising, because that's exactly what public intentional humiliation is intended to do. It's intended to make someone feel bad. And to say that it was psychologically abusive is pretty obvious. These were hired professional facilitators who presumably have authority in this area, and this was done at work in a professional setting in front of all my colleagues. So yeah, I consider it abusive. But when I think about why, it certainly has no place in a professional setting, publicly shaming someone. And so I tried to think about, where would this be acceptable behavior? In what context? In your personal life? If somebody does that in your personal life, somebody who's shaming me for expressing a genuine feeling and telling me I'm actually doing something else, that's probably someone I wouldn't want to be around, and certainly not something I expect to occur in a professional work setting. So all I can think is that the only place this might be acceptable is maybe a behavior modification program, using shame as a tool to compel somebody to change their behavior or to do what you want them to do. In this case, using shame to try to compel me to talk about my race in the scripted way, the way that is acceptable for a white person to do. I wouldn't call it a behavior modification program that's very healthy. The only place I can see this as being even remotely acceptable is a dog training program. Dogs feel shame. You can use shame to train dogs to do what you want them to do, because dogs really want the approval of their human. And so if you shame dogs when they engage in behavior you don't want them to do, then they'll stop doing that behavior, and you reward them for the other behavior. So that is really the only place I can think of. Maybe you can all think of another place where it's appropriate to publicly shame somebody to try to compel them into a certain behavior, a certain speech. So that's what happened to me in residence life, and that pushed me over the edge, because I realized that, one, what I wasn't quite sure of in the library, like whether this constituted racial discrimination or hostility, I became very sure that it actually was. The second realization was starker, which is a white person can no longer simply abstain from reciting the script that is expected of them about their skin color, from participating in what really is racially harassing behavior, forced behavior, trying to get you to feel something that you don't feel, and say things about yourself, to think a certain way, and really compelling speech, and using shame as the punishment if you don't do it in the way that we want you to do it. It has a name. It's called a racially hostile work environment. That is what it is. That is what pushed me over the edge to file a complaint. For anyone else at Smith who's watching this, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not crazy. This is beyond the pale crazy making. I've gotten some private emails from some of you and phone calls, and I'm here if you want to talk. I will not reveal who you are. I promise. I really, really understand. The only reason I am here doing this is because of what happened in Res Life, and really not just Res Life, but how my complaint was responded to or not responded to is the key. The key phrase there is really what pushed me to this point, because Smith obviously does not care that it is breaking the law. It doesn't care. And I don't think Smith really cares about litigation either, because Smith is a very powerful institution, has a lot of money. Its endowment is well over $1 billion, has lawyers galore. And I don't think Smith is troubled at all by thinking that somebody might instigate a lawsuit. I think what Smith doesn't like is publicity. So I felt like I had no choice but to try to be public about this. And I ask any of you who are watching this who are journalists, please get in touch with me, because I filed a complaint that was over 100 pages of information of stuff going on at Smith. And I need to get it out there because this is very wrong and very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening.